The door opens, and before anything else, a new scent slips quietly into the space. It is unfamiliar, layered, and immediately noticeable to your dog in a way humans cannot fully perceive. Your dog does not rush forward in excitement the way people expect. Instead, something more controlled unfolds. The ears shift slightly. The body becomes still for a fraction longer, and the eyes narrow with focus. In that quiet moment, your dog is not simply reacting to a new animal. It is trying to understand whether the structure of its world has just changed. What looks like hesitation is actually a rapid internal process unfolding in real time. One that determines how safe, stable, and predictable life will be from this point forward. Most people assume this moment is simple. Let them meet, let them sniff, give them time. But inside your dog's mind, there is no such thing as a simple introduction. There is no concept of a new friend or a new sibling. Instead, their brain is recalculating everything at once: safety, personal space, routine, and even their role within the environment are all being reassessed in real time. Dogs don't start with emotion. They start with survival logic. Behavioral studies on dogs living in multi-dog households have shown that when a new individual enters the group, dogs immediately begin adjusting their movement patterns, their distance from others, and the way they interact within the space. They are not reacting emotionally first. They are reorganizing their understanding of the world around them. If this helped you see what your dog is actually processing in that quiet moment, take a second to like the video and share it with someone who is about to introduce a new pet. At first contact, your dog is not asking whether it likes the new pet. It is asking whether the situation is safe. This risk assessment happens through details humans often overlook. Your dog observes the tension in the other animal's body, the rhythm of its movement, the direction and intensity of its gaze, and even the subtle chemical signals carried in scent. Fast or erratic movement can signal unpredictability. Direct staring can feel like pressure. Even a calm dog may appear distant or disengaged during this phase because it is processing information rather than forming a social response. This is why some dogs approach briefly and then withdraw. It is not rejection, it is evaluation. As this process continues, another system begins to activate beneath the surface: social structure mapping. Dogs are highly sensitive to how relationships are organized within a group, but this is not about dominance in the way people often assume. Research into dog-human attachment, including studies comparing dogs to human infants, shows that dogs rely heavily on stable relational patterns to feel secure. When a new pet enters the home, your dog begins observing how attention, space, and resources are distributed. Who is greeted first? Who receives food? Who occupies certain areas? But instead of pushing forward, many dogs respond by stepping back. They become quieter, more observant, and less intrusive in their behavior. This is not a loss of confidence. It is a stabilizing strategy designed to avoid conflict while the system reorganizes. The deeper source of stress during this transition is not the presence of the new pet itself. It is the sudden loss of predictability. Before this moment, your dog's world followed a rhythm. Feeding times were consistent, walks followed familiar patterns, attention was predictable. When a new animal enters the environment, even small changes can disrupt this structure. Meals may be delayed or divided. Movement patterns inside the house shift. Your attention becomes less consistent. Studies in canine stress physiology show that dogs rely heavily on routine to regulate cortisol levels. When predictable patterns break, even without a direct threat, the brain interprets the environment as less stable. This is why some dogs begin to show subtle signs such as pacing, reduced appetite, increased alertness, or quiet restlessness. These are not random behaviors. They are signals that the dog is trying to recalibrate its internal sense of stability. While humans focus heavily on visual introductions, dogs prioritize something else entirely: scent. Research in canine communication has consistently shown that scent is one of the primary ways dogs interpret both social and environmental information. Before a new pet is fully accepted, its scent must become integrated into the territory. Your dog will revisit areas where the new animal has been, pausing to process scent information in a way that looks slow and repetitive but is actually highly structured. This process allows the brain to reclassify what was once unfamiliar into something known. Shared spaces, bedding, and gradual exposure all contribute to this integration. Until the scent becomes familiar, the new pet does not fully belong in your dog's mental map of the environment. At the same time, there is a phase that is rarely discussed but often observed: a temporary shift in identity. Some dogs begin to behave differently during this period. A confident dog may become more withdrawn. An independent dog may suddenly seek more closeness. Others may show small changes in energy, posture, or responsiveness. This is not regression, it is recalibration. Your dog is adjusting its role within a changing system. It is testing how to exist within a new structure where another presence now shares the same environment. As stability returns, these behaviors often resolve naturally. Scientific data on pet introduction strongly supports this gradual approach, not just as a training preference, but as a neurological necessity. Longitudinal studies on multi-pet households consistently show that slow, structured introductions lead to lower cortisol levels, fewer stress-related behaviors, and significantly better long-term compatibility. What's important to understand is that this process is not just about behavior on the surface. It is about how the brain processes uncertainty. When two animals are introduced too quickly, their nervous systems are forced to interpret a large amount of unfamiliar information all at once. New scent, new movement, new energy, all entering the same space without warning. This creates a spike in arousal, and the brain shifts into a protective mode. In that state, the dog is not learning. It is simply reacting. Defensive behaviors, avoidance or tension, are not personality flaws. They are natural responses to a system that feels unstable. When the introduction is slowed down, something very different happens. The brain is given time to categorize information instead of resisting it. Scent becomes the first layer of familiarity, which is critical because scent is a dog's primary way of understanding the world. By allowing your dog to investigate the new animal indirectly through bedding, toys, or controlled scent exposure, you are giving the brain a low-pressure way to process the change. Visual contact comes later, and even then, it should be brief and structured, not prolonged or forced. Each small, calm interaction becomes a data point that tells the nervous system this is not a threat. Over time, these repeated experiences begin to overwrite the initial uncertainty. Consistency plays an equally powerful role during this transition. Dogs rely heavily on predictable patterns to feel secure, so maintaining stable routines acts as an anchor while everything else is changing. Feeding times, walk schedules, and individual attention should remain as consistent as possible. This continuity sends a clear signal that although something new has entered the environment, the core structure of the dog's world is still intact. Without that stability, even a well-managed introduction can feel overwhelming because the dog has no familiar reference point to return to. Over time, something begins to shift again. The unfamiliar scent becomes neutral. The new movement patterns become predictable. The environment regains its rhythm, and when that happens, your dog no longer needs to calculate every detail. Acceptance does not arrive as a dramatic moment. It appears quietly, as the absence of tension. The dog moves more freely again. It rests without constant alertness. It no longer monitors every small change. Because in your dog's mind, this experience was never about liking or disliking another animal. It was about answering 3 silent questions that define its entire sense of safety. Is this environment still stable? Is my role still secure? Can I predict what happens next? And maybe the most important part is this: your dog never needed the world to stay the same. It only needed to feel that its place in that world was still secure. When you give them that sense of stability, everything else begins to fall into place on its own. So if this helped you see your dog a little differently, share this with someone who's about to bring a new pet home. And if you want to understand your dog on a deeper level, make sure you subscribe, because what you're seeing on the surface is only a small part of what's really going on inside their mind.